When Arnie brought back Freddie's 675, he also brought us back another gift, and that was Freddie's P1 engine. That is an experience. I think very few people have ever had the opportunity to go through an engine that's been sitting in an ocean. It was amazing what had gone on in this thing. What salt, water, electricity discharging through an engine into the water can do to an engine is pretty spectacular. Arnie picked up the engine. He got the engine to us, and it was my job to kind of go through this thing and figure out, what were we going to do? How are we going to get this car back on the road? I mean, I think Freddie goes into these things a little bit blind, hey, this looks cool, let's see what we can do with it. He had been working on the battery side of things, trying to figure out, hey, is this battery savable? The P1's a hybrid. You've got this crazy battery and this electric drive and all this stuff. It's like, where are we going to go with this? We get the engine, start to take it apart, and this thing is just destroyed. It's eaten through the liners. Inside the engine, the area where the thrust bearing goes is corroded away. There's a process that they do with certain metals where they pickle them. It's called pickling. They use salt to cure the metal and change the properties of it. This thing's been pickled beyond belief. Pockets of materials are removed. Stuff is rusted. It's not looking good for this engine. Freddie has kind of pretty much figured that he doesn't want to do it hybrid. That's not going to happen anymore. The battery is not going to be easy to rebuild. It's too cost prohibitive to get this battery set up. So hey, let's make this thing all gas. But can we use the P1 engine to do this? We started to look at the P1 engine. Fortunately for us, and amazingly, we had two P1 engines there at the same time. I had a P1 engine that was here for a complete rebuild, a refresh that was going back into a P1, and then we have this sand and salt-soaked rust pile over here. So we were able to kind of look at the two and try and come up with a game plan of how we wanted to go forward. Could we use the block? Could we use the heads? We rebuild all these things and make it work, but there was just too much that was creating issues. It doesn't have a starter. There's no starter on a P1. It uses the electric drive motor to start things. The driveline damper setup is completely different from, any of the other P1s. It has to be able to disengage the gas engine from the electric engine, so you've got an extra clutch in there. The AC was relocated to the other side, so it's missing bosses on this side, and it was just like, no, we're not going to be able to make this thing work. So the decision was made to make this thing into a 4-liter. Basically, he was going to do a 720 transmission, 720 engine, and put this all together, or try to. But then you've got your wing control. You've got 720 uses the hydraulics from the transmission to run the wing. The P1 has a completely separate system. So there was a lot on his end that he needed to figure out. Fortunately for me, I just got to do the motor stuff. So we decided we're just going to build this thing up like a 720. We're just going to put everything into it that we need to make it into a 720, and then Freddie was going to figure out the rest from there. Building it as a 720 could create some issues. It was kind of interesting. One of the things we learned on the 675 build was that they've moved the transmission around a bit. The original cars, they had a transmission mount. It's round, there's a hole straight through the center. That's what hangs the transmission in the back. When they did the changes to the driveline damper, they made it thicker. They had to put like a little bell housing on the transmission. This scooted everything back a little bit. So now the newer cars, they've got this transmission mount. However, the hole is offset. So they are moving things around. The P1, because of the extra clutch and stuff like that, it is located further back. So that was one of the good things, I guess you could say, of making it possible to run a 720 engine and transmission setup in there. It was already set up for that. However, the intake manifold, the fuel lines, you're running double injectors, a different fuel rail setup, where the intercooler goes in relationship to the turbos. I mean, a lot of stuff is packed in there. So this is all stuff that obviously we needed to worry about. Well, I guess I didn't really have to worry about it. Freddie needed to worry about it, but it was all stuff I was thinking about, and basically, hey, Freddie, look, this may be an issue. And I'm taking videos and sending them to him every day. Hey, look at this, look at this. Got this other P1 engine over here sitting here. And I'm like, okay, so this is how this is set up. Because not all that stuff came with the engine when Freddie dropped it off. So I was able to look over here, okay, this is how this is set up. This is how a 720 does it. You are going to need to be able to figure out how to get these two things to talk or communicate or connected and that sort of stuff. So there was quite a bit of a big worry as to, is all of this stuff going to be able to make it in there? Is it going to hit frame rails or, that sort of stuff? But fortunately for me, this was a Freddie issue, not an Ivan issue. P1s are a really cool car. Getting into the engines and actually seeing how they did stuff. I'm a big fan of factory race cars. I mean, what the factory can do is really, really cool. I've had some experience with Porsche and factory race cars, and knowing the street car and seeing what they did for the race car has been really, really cool. Taking street cars over all of this time and building them into race cars, it's cool to be able to see how other people do things. The P1 is no different. I mean, there are so many hand-built parts, hand-labeled and etched, and just the cool ways they did things to make this P1 all come together was really neat. Having those two engines there too, we got to see the progression of things. Like, they actually changed things in between P1s. Refreshing that P1, they've even changed them further. Like, we got update kits on, transmission seals and that sort of stuff. There's some really, really cool engineering behind the P1. I think it's a really impressive car. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing the W1. So the P1, it's a 3.8 liter engine. You've got a hybrid drive and electric motor that kind of adds to that power. At the time, that's what they had available to them. That's how they could get that kind of horsepower. But it is so easy these days. The technology has evolved and changed. It's so easy to replicate that power in an ICE motor. You can easily do that these days. The volumetric efficiency of the M motor, I don't know what you want to refer to, M838 or the M840, the VE of that engine is phenomenal. I mean, torque is absolutely flat. Horsepower continues to rise. I'm sure as we progress and we start spinning these engines faster and faster, they're going to make more and more horsepower. So the P1, a little over 900 horsepower at the crank. We can easily replicate that on a 720. I mean, we're talking about a tune, possibly downpipes. I mean, it does not take much at all to turn that wick up to make that crank horsepower. I mean, I think our record is right around 840 wheel horsepower on 93 octane in a 720. I mean, that's doable on a daily basis. With Freddie, I believe his goal is 250 plus miles per hour in a heavy aero car. I mean, the P1 is designed for downforce and going around corners. So he's got this car that's got a lot of drag, a lot of downforce, and he wants to go 250 miles an hour. This is very similar to drag racing or cannonballing, where the faster you want to go, you're talking about that ramp. You need a ton of horsepower. So the goals for that car is a lot of horsepower to be able to do what he wants to do. So we built that motor strong. I mean, we put everything we had at that point in time. We put everything we had into that engine to make it as strong as it possibly can be to handle the horsepower that he's going to need to do those speeds.
Buying a used car without getting ripped off is all about research, and we can pull a Carfax or look on the VINwiki app, but there is nothing like an in-person inspection. And the fastest, cheapest, and easiest way to do that is with the Lemon Squad. Lemon Squad has been a longtime sponsor here at VINwiki, and they have representatives all over the country that can put eyes and hands on a car and send you a detailed inspection report plus pictures, usually within 24, 48, even 72 hours. And so there's nothing that makes you a shrewder negotiator than the information that you're going to get from a real person actually seeing the car. So check out the Lemon Squad now at the link in the description below for a special discount. And if you do want a Carfax, they'll even save you $10 on that. The Lemon Squad is who I use every time I'm trying to negotiate a deal, because I can't always be there, especially if it's across the country, but their nationwide network of inspectors can do just that. So check them out now to thank them for their support of VINwiki and buy your car more safely with the Lemon Squad.